Hey everyone, this is Steve with the Milson Perspective. I just wanted to put together a quick video on how to convert my Crossfire DG-3 ruck from external frame mode to internal frame mode. I haven't seen anything else out on this, and just wanted to get the information out there. Two quick things to note. On almost all of the straps on this ruck, they have a little loop, and as shipped, they have a little Velcro retainer in them that allows you to roll up the strap. I've just gone ahead and pulled those out for the ease of this task. Also, you'll see a lot of the connections in this pack are made with these sewn tabs in the webbing. It's just a piece of webbing that's triple sewn and tacked there, and then that'll go into some sort of a slot and be held that way. I just wanted you to see a little bit of a detail on how that works. And let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is get the hip belt out of the way. You'll see that this ruck has several kind of larger component groups that work together, and the hip belt is one of them. So there's two D-rings here, and you've got to finagle this tab through both of them. The first one there that I just undid connects the hip belt to the frame, or to the pack bag, I'm sorry. And then the second one attaches the two sections of hip belt together. And just go ahead and undo both since we're here. So as you can see, the hip belt is 4 padded sections. There's a little piece of Velcro here in the middle that holds those together. Once you undo that, it allows this half to pivot up to release this keyhole connection. And of course here we can see the 3 adjustments. Get that up, and now the hip belt is out of the way, and we will convert that here in a bit. Alright, so now we need to get the shoulder harness assembly off of the frame because it stands between us and getting the frame off of the pack bag. The first thing we've got up here at the top is the load lifter straps. I'm going to loosen those. And then we've got some of those tabs. So all across the top, we've got 2 tabs that hold the bag to the frame, and then we've got 4 tabs, these 2, and then 2 down here that attach the shoulder harness. So I'm going to do all of this in real time so you can kind of see how long it takes. The first thing I'm going to do is unhook these top corners from the pack bag, and that'll give me some room to play with the other straps. I'll try to keep my commentary worthwhile throughout the process, but if you want to speed up, feel free and fast forward. Alright, so we've got the load lifter straps done. Now we've got 2 other tri-glides down here, one here and one here, and note their orientation, they face backwards. So we need to reach under here and pop those loose. I'm not going to undo them completely just because that gives me extra pieces. Now here's another one of those tabs, and that goes to the top of that tri-glide. I want to just push that out. The piece looks like this, comes up through the frame and then connects like so. So since I've got them loose, it makes it fairly easy to pull this through. And that's the top end of the shoulder harness. Now we can come down here to the bottom end. See here we have 2 sections of ladder sewn webbing. And by ladder sewn, I mean that it's basically got 3 tabs in sequence so that you can tab it in place wherever you want to. And this is what gives us our height adjustment on the shoulder harness. So it would be slightly easier for me to unhook at this point the frame from the pack bag. I could undo this part a little bit easier, but for the sake of the video, getting pieces out of the way so you can clearly see, I'm going to go ahead and knock that out. Now, we're still attached at the bottom, and you'll see that that is just the lower shoulder strap. We can either do this first or last when taking apart the shoulder harness. just pop these through these tri-glides right next to the quick release mechanism. You'll notice there's a loop here. That's where another one of those retainers go. And then I'm just going to see here that it's just looped through the frame. And we're just going to undo that loop. Now it's important to pay attention which direction these go into the frame. You're going to want to look at the curve here and note that it goes from the top, in the top and out the bottom. That'll be important to remember both for setting it up in internal frame mode or when we're bringing it back to external frame mode. I'm just going to get this other one loose. These tri-glides are a little bit on the tight side, which is not a dig. I'd rather have good hardware, especially on such a load-bearing aspect of the pack. Okay, there's that, and that separates the rest of the shoulder harness from the pack. So what we're left with is just the frame itself. And basically, we've got this strap at the top. Looks kind of like what we'd see on a Alice pack. And then we have a bunch of these tabs that go around the perimeter. And I'm just going to start at the bottom. There's 2 at the bottom. There's 3 on each side. And then, of course, the 2 that we already undid up at the top. Something I want to make note of is that this center one, the hole in the frame for the strap, the tab strap, shares this other strap here. Both of those straps go through that hole. The unfortunate thing about that is that you've got to take this strap out before you can get the tab to fit through. As you see, there's this diamond piece of fabric, and its purpose in life is to keep the pack bag from bulging out and touching your back or getting in that place where the plate, that rear plate on a plate carrier could go. The only issue there is that while we do have good adjustment this way to keep that nice and tight and prevent the diamond piece from moving, as you can see, these vertical straps are nice and loose. So it really doesn't perform its intended function. As a result, I don't actually use it when I set this pack up. I just wanted to show this pack as delivered from Crossfire. And once we're done taking it apart, or taking it to internal frame mode, we'll go back to external frame mode and I'll show you how I put it together, which is ever so slightly different, just using some slight modifications that I've learned from people that are much smarter than me. So that diamond piece of fabric is now out of the way, and our last of our tabs are released. We can just pull this out. Notice we've got some fabric on the inside of this strap to prevent chafing and all those things, and now the frame is free and we can go and start setting up the internal frame. Okay, so the first thing is going to be to get the internal frame into the pack bag. The DG-3 comes with this internal frame. It's got frame stays already in it, pre-bent and everything for your comfort. And then the pack bag itself has a compartment inside the back, just like a plate carrier. So the flap comes open, the frame goes inside. Make sure you get it all the way up. Use a little bit of anger. Get it in there nice and tight. Alright, so now we're just going to do the same exact routine with the shoulder harness that we did before to get it undone. So I'm going to start with the bottom. Now the important thing to note here is we've got 3 attachment points, okay? 1 is sewn onto the pack back, and then 2 are on this little wing. So this is going to be the shoulder harness, this is going to be the lower half of the shoulder strap, and this is going to be the hip belt. So I'll show you how all that works. So we're going to go in from the top, putting all the webbing through. This isn't where we hook it to adjust. We bring it back up to the buckle on the harness, and that's where we get our adjustment. If we wanted to go shorter or higher, we do like so. I'm just going to keep it on the tall setting for now. So now we'll do the same thing on this side, through, and hook it to itself. Okay, so now we've got these next two straps. These are going to go up, and now we have a choice to make. So we can either hook these to the inside or the outside of these two D-rings. There's two on each side. We're not going to be using these tabs because those help hook the frame in, the external frame. So if I want my load lifters to pull the shoulder straps wider while I wear it, then I'm going to put these on the inside and the load lifters on the outside. If the opposite is true, then I'm going to flip it around. So I have just kind of always ran it with the load lifters on the inside, and it seems to work well for me. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh, switch that one around. There we go. Make sure you're orienting these buckles correctly. And as soon as you get those in, we can just tighten it all down. Don't forget to get this section nice and tight, because that's what's going to help maintain the curve in the, what am I trying to say? The curve in that frame sheet, and that's going to give you some standoff distance here between your back and the pack. So it won't be nearly as much as the external frame, and it won't be able to resist as much weight as the external frame, but it will still give you some standoff. So now we've put the load lifters in, but we haven't attached the bottom yet. So we talked about earlier coming in from the top, out through the bottom. And note we're using the little D-rings on these little wings for the bottom half of the shoulder straps. Again, we're going to look at our curve, see which way it wants to curve, in through the top, and out through the bottom. Here's that. Bring the shoulder harness around, and just wiggle this guy through this little loop. Now would be the time to attach your Velcro here into that loop if you want to have something to secure the tail of that strap. Okay, that's it for the shoulder harness. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to knock out the hip belt. Okay, so here we have the hip belt. As you can see, we have the 4 pieces from external frame mode, and then we have this other pad that's included with the pack, and this is what we'll use for attaching it to the internal frame. So, like just about everything else, this starts with undoing some tabs. We're going to get rid of these 2 middle sections of the hip belt. These ones go bye-bye because they have the connections for the external frame. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to hook the wings to this other center part. Now notice that this is off center, so this gives you some adjustment. You need to figure out if you want this lumbar pad slightly higher than the wings or lower. I'm going to go slightly lower, and I'm going to do my tabs, the small ones, and then don't forget to do the large ones. So the wings are just a sleeve for the actual hip belt, and this large belt is what's actually going to carry the weight and transfer it from the ruck to your hips. The smaller webbing is just kind of stabilization to keep the belt from pivoting too much. One of the little tips I've come across for putting this together is I just kind of stack the wing on top here, and it clips in nicely. Alright, let's get the pack back in here. We'll get this hooked up. Okay, so now that we've converted the hip belt, we'll just go ahead and put it on. Just mating the Velcro to the Velcro. And just want to make sure that when we put it on, we kind of line up these buckles here. So I'll put it on like so. And I'm going to, again, stack these over just a little bit, pull my slack, and pass this through to attach the hip belt to the pack bag. And this also allows the hip belt itself to act as one of those straps that pulls the load into the hips that you'll see on a lot of civilian rucks. It just kind of pulls double duty there. So this is the completed internal frame. Notice that you've got still, like I said, some space here, a little bit of a trampoline effect on the shoulder harness, and this is a great way to carry lighter loads, or for whatever reason you want to switch it over, have a little bit more flex in your frame. And now we will go back the other way, and I'll show you how I set this ruck up in external frame mode. Okay, so now that we have the hip belt put together, we're just going to line it up with this Velcro here at the bottom of the ruck, taking note to line up the straps here with these buckles. Just kind of flip it over. And now the last task is to actually attach the hip belt to the pack bag. We're going to do that by these tabs right down here. Again, just stack the wing over the pad, give you that extra little bit of slack you need to pull this through. There we go. The other thing that having this solid of a connection and the adjustability of the hip belt allows you to pull the load into your hips through just the hip belt itself. A lot of civilian rucks will have extra straps that do that, and this kind of doubles as that function. So this is it. This is the ruck in internal frame mode, and now we're just going to repeat the process backwards, put it back in external frame mode, and I'll show just kind of some of the small variances that I use when I put it in there. So the first thing we're going to do, as we did before, is remove the hip belt. Of course, it's a lot easier if you can see what you're doing. There we go. Alright, hip belt comes off. Just another point of adjustability on the ruck. If at any point you don't want a hip belt, you could just attach the lumbar pad here. Same with the two middle pieces in external frame mode, and that'll enable you to run the ruck without the hip belt if you don't want that for whatever reason. Alright, so let's do the lower straps on the shoulder harness first this time. Pull those out, remembering that when we put it back together, we want to come in the top and out the bottom. And just be careful as you're feeding this through not to let these little pieces go the wrong way through the tri-glide, or you'll end up making a tab, just like the rest of what holds the ruck together. Okay, so now we've got the load lifters loose with them the rest of the way so you can see a little better. We're going to push them through. Loosen our upper attachment straps. Push them through. And lastly, our ladder webbing. Alright, now all we have to do is pull the internal frame out. We can start putting it back together. Okay, so just need to close up the plate pocket here, or the frame pocket, I guess, and we can bring in our frame. So, making sure just to bring it in all the way, we'll tuck these tabs down for now. We're not going to use them right away. We want to make sure that we get all these side tabs kind of sitting right. Otherwise they'll start to get in the way. Now notice I'm not putting the diamond fabric in there. That's not going to be part of this. I want to start poking these side attachment straps through. I'm starting at the top, working my way down. If you'll remember, not only do they poke through the frame and lock, they also go all the way around and then back through these D-rings. So we'll need to connect all of our D-rings. Sometimes they get flipped underneath. Just pop them out. Actually, I'm going to leave these last two undone from the D-rings so that they've got a little bit of slack, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Okay, so now we can bring the shoulder harness in, and notice that I'm not installing the diamond-shaped fabric that went in the middle originally. I don't feel like it really does its job very well, and so I just omit it. So the first thing to do is to run the bottom attachment through. Now this is where I'm going to start kind of changing what I'm doing. You remember that, if you'll remember, there's that angled piece of, or angled D-ring down here that's not on. So you've got the two that are on this little wing, you got the one that this exact piece hooked to in the internal frame mode. And I'm actually going to run this strap through that in addition to the frame. And this is why I left that, I left these couple loose so I'd have a little bit extra space to get in there. I just like having the shoulder harness tight and not moving around on a pack is very important, especially with heavy loads. And so I just feel like every opportunity I have to connect the two, I should take. And I haven't seen a measurable difference between setting it up these two specific ways. I just like it. Okay, so now we can attach the top of the harness just like before. You'll notice that we've got 6 holes in the top here, and this attachment is going to go in the bottom center one on each side. So 6 holes here, 6 holes here, bottom center is what we're headed for. I suppose you could adjust this in or out if you wanted to. I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be though. It is a little bit of a pain to kind of finagle it through. Once you get it, just get everything nice and tightened down. Again, keeping all this stuff, shoulder harness and everything nice and tight is important because it will mitigate movement in the system and thereby the load will not be bouncing around on you. So now we come to the load lifters, and when we did them before, we just put them straight through the frame like so. The way that load lifters work, they need to be mounted on the pack as high as possible in order to do their job. They are in fact called load lifters. So I'm going to mount them backwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the strap over the frame and then connect it from the back side. And this is just as strong. We don't lose any strength or anything. Actually, we gain strength because the other thing that I'm doing, you'll notice, is I'm putting it through this D-ring attached to the pack bag first. So we're actually getting an additional 2 points at which the frame, shoulder harness, and pack bag are all interconnected. So instead of this just being a connection between the frame and the harness, we're connecting all 3. One more extra time. And again, more connections, more better, in my opinion. So last, we're just going to pull through these tabs on the corner, and those will be our final connection points at the top of the pack. Okay, so now we can pull our load lifters tight, and you'll notice that they pull up just a little bit more, and that does have an effect on how the load carries. It pulls the top of the pack just that much closer to your body. So now the last thing we need to do is put the hip belt together. We've still got it in internal frame mode. If you remember, the switch is exactly the reverse as before. Just undo the tabs. Remember, we can kind of overlap the foam pieces to get us a little extra slack if we need it. Now we've got our 2 center pieces, and remember, they orient like so. They can go on either side. Just kind of figure out how you like it, and then these are also interchangeable, so figure out which side you like to have the buckle on, if you like it coming in male side on the right or on the left. So I like it on the right, so I'm going to put the belt together like this. Put our tabs together, and again, this is what I mean by overlapping. When you've got this, just overlap, set one pad on top of the other if you need that extra room. And we don't really need it when we're just assembling the belt. It's more useful when we're putting the belt onto the pack. Okay, so here's the belt put together. Of course, we'll have to split it to actually attach it. One thing I forgot to do is, of course, attach to the bottom half of the suspension. We want to do that before we attach the hip belt. So again, look at the way that it curves. Start at the top and come out the bottom. And this is another place where having these bottom 2 connections loose still is very handy. And we will tighten those up as part of concluding the shoulder harness. So, okay, there's our curve, top, out the bottom, and back through our D-ring. So just so we don't forget, let's go ahead and do these tabs here. There's that one, this one, this one here, and this one here. Now note, we are not using this D-ring that's on this little tab over here. That one does not get used at all in external frame mode. Just get the top of the shoulder harness attached. need help, you can get your finger through this loop on the end. You need a little bit more leverage. Tri-glides are pretty tight. You're putting them through like so. There we go. Okay, let's get that up and out of the way. Bring in our hip belt. So first things first is to match up the keyhole. I'm going for the middle, so I just line it up, put it in place. I feel it drop in, and now I'm going to push and hold as I rotate, and that just kind of gets some of the pressure off that keyhole. I'm going to get this Velcro nice and seated, and then of course we still need to do one more thing. We got to attach this webbing on the side, and it goes exactly the same place it did on the internal frame mode. It's to the D-ring that's on the bag, and that's just another other point where we connect everything together and sandwich the frame in the middle. So there we have it. Just a couple small differences between the initial setup and how I put it together. I've done some other modifications to this bag, and I'll go through those in another article. But this concludes how to switch the DG-3 from external frame to internal frame and back. And I hope you've enjoyed it, found this informative, and please subscribe and keep an eye out for all of our other articles that we do.